Richie Matthews here. Welcome to my channel. So I'm going to run the numbers through my profit calculator, the numbers of a new rental arbitrage deal that I've been approved for. It's a 6 two-bedroom apartments in one apartment building. I'm going to start with one. Even though the numbers prove themselves for me using my profit calculator, which I'm going to illustrate for you right now, I always just start with one in a new building. And then after I get it up and going and I'm making my money back, then I start incrementally taking on other units based on cash flow. I only grow on cash flow. I've acquired 62 rental arbitrage properties. We've grossed over $6 million on Airbnb and other sites like that. But I've only done them incrementally when my cash flow permits. And that's really the only way to do this. I know there's a bunch of folks out there doing this at scale, and they're deploying a bunch of money for each of the units, but I still think it's more prudent to do these one or two at a time based on cash flow. So you're always in a great position cash wise for you to be able to handle whatever you need to. My formula goes like this. So typically what I'll do is I'll analyze a market first, make sure it's legal, what the conditions of the ordinance are, and then see what the median rent is for the type of property that I'm going to look for. So in this case, I was looking for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartments in this market. I need to prove that I can 2x rent. So I use Rentometer to find out what the median rent for a given type of property is once I determine if it's legal. And then once I do that, then I get on AirDNA and I look back for the last 24 months, month in and month out, want to make sure that I'm going to be able to make twice that. And then from that, after I pay the rent, I have another 20% overhead per unit, software and utilities per unit. That's my overhead. And then from that, my margins are approximately $1,500 is what I make net after everything per 2-bedroom. And so I have to prove that I can do that in the market. And once that checks off, and then I do a qualitative analysis step, which I'm not going to do today. I'll show you that in another video. But today it's just about to show you this new deal that I just got. And then what I'll do after I've been approved is I run the numbers through my calculator. Now, here's an important part of this. I'm not running numbers on my calculator until I get a yes from a building. I'm simply doing I'm running the cash flow analysis. Then I do qualitative analysis. And once those check off, I start getting to acquisitions. I contact a whole bunch of apartments in this case. And the ones that ultimately tell me tentative yes, a verbal yes, then I run the numbers so I know where we stand on the particular deal, right? So if you're doing analysis all day long in the beginning, you're not going to get the quantity you need, the quantity of leads generated for you to get a good deal. Getting a deal is not hard in this business at all. It's actually quite easy. It's one of the easiest of the steps. My 4-step formula, step 2 is acquisitions. It's very, very easy to get a deal. It's more challenging, however, to get a good deal. And that's what we're going to do here. And this calculator will help you do that. So step 1 is you want to find out what the square footage is. In this case, it's a 900 square foot apartment. We furnish around $8 per square foot these days. With some finishes and an accent wall, the move-in and all that, gets condensed down to $8 per square foot. So it's going to cost me $7,200 to get in this unit. It's very, very typical. That's actually what the number is these days. It used to be a bit lower a couple of years ago, around $6, thanks to non-inflation then. And so now, because we do have inflation, thanks to the government, we are now around $8 per square foot. So $300 deposit on this one. I did not have to negotiate that. These days, a lot of apartments are advertising lower deposits as an incentive for you to lease up with them. And that's just a sign of the times. Right now is a very, very good time to get into rental arbitrage because of market conditions are more favorable to renters in many markets, not everywhere. And that's what we're ultimately looking for. And I've done a previous video on finding that, so you can look in my profile to see that. So in this case, I actually did negotiate the first month's rent free, 4 weeks rent concessions, as we call it, to make this deal work. Look, if you see my realistic expectation on this, it's $1,500 net after all my expenses. And it wasn't that way in the beginning. I actually had to get the first month's rent down a bit. So the rent is $2,700. My utilities, you're gonna have to ballpark these. You're gonna have to sort of guess. You can look and see statistics in a market if you're not familiar. I'm in this market, so I know it's approximately $150 a month. Internet's $70, tax license and all that. So it comes out to $3,100 per month. And now the time to run comps. Running your comps is the most important thing you can do in this, whether you're in real estate or in rental arbitrage. comps and occupancy. So here's how I run mine. So I go to AirDNA. I go to a given market. There's two tools you can use. You can use Rentalizer right up here called Rent Calculator now. You run the market that you're in. And instead of using what AirDNA gives you right here, that's a big mistake because oftentimes they're comping you against properties that aren't similar. If you're a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, you can't compare yourself to a house, obviously, or a townhouse, or even another apartment or a condo that's 2-bedroom, 1-bath. It has to be 2-2. So unfortunately, AirDNA doesn't do that. It's always 6 guests with the 2-bedroom. So AirDNA doesn't. So they do the heavy lifting. So all you do is scroll down to the bottom, and here you go. You got the comps. One of the things I'm loading into the comps is I'm looking right here to get revenue potential, not revenue. Keep that in mind. And then occupancy. You load that up in your calculator, and the calculator will then give you the average occupancy rate and the realistic expectation, which is based on comps. And in this case, I had 5 solid comps. I mean, these properties, one of them was actually in the building, and these were right around my city block. The more densely populated the area, the more accurate your comps will be. So that's why I like to go out in submarkets of major cities, Class B apartments, in markets that have work travel, business travel, leisure travel, to remove any of the seasonal nature of this business, and you'll get a very solid property. This one looks like a fantastic property. It's already shown it. I just needed to get the numbers down a bit. And so I was able to get the first month's rent free. Look what happens if I'm going to add the $2,700 in my first month's rent, as with the deposit, which is fairly is very typical in most deals. My payback is almost 8 months for me to get my money, and my cash on cash returns only 143%. Now, a lot of people think 143% is a lot. It may be in other industries, but I needed to grow on cash flow alone. So, you're not going to be able to deploy new capital and grow a little bit too slowly for that. And so for that reason, I was able to get a good deal on this one because the owner was vacant. That was key. He had a higher vacancy. I came to him at the right time, and he actually had said no to us in the previous. I came back to him. I noticed. I put, I just showed him how much vacancy he has, and whatever he was going through, he said yes. So he was able to do that. So that's it. The profit calculator, you run your calculations, which for us is around $8 per square foot. That's a tried number over the years. It's incrementally gone up a bit because we're making the units nicer, and also because of inflation. And then I run my comps, my expenses, what my build out costs will be, and then it will ultimately give me an estimate, a realistic expectation of what my payback is over time. So in a nutshell, that's how I run my numbers. If you like my free profit calculator, just DM me, or you can just comment below that you like it. If you would like to attend our webinar, we're going to actually have a webinar about qualitative analysis, which is the step before we get to this, which is the sort of more nuanced than cash flow analysis. But that's how I run my deals. It's no more complex than that. I'm simply looking to 2x rent. I find a market that can consistently perform. But so there's a lot of really good performing markets in the country, but you can't just look for high performing or high demand short-term rentals or midterm rentals. You also need to get it good inexpensively so you have cash flow. So for me, the formula is just 2x rent. I just need to make sure I can make twice as much as whatever my costs are. My rent is going to be my fixed cost. And then I add into that about 20% overhead. And from that, I get my profit. So that's how I've done all my deals. I've run all 62 of my rental arbitrage deals through my calculator. And if you have any more questions, just DM below. Appreciate you showing up.